Hi everyone, thanks for the views and the comments on my last video. Really appreciated it. A lot of people asked for a crafting guide. So here it is. First of all, let's start with the wand. So if you're going to craft your wand, you're going to want to start with a fractured base. You got a couple options for which bases. First of all, you're going to want an imbued wand of at least item level 74, I believe. And preferably item level 84. And then you're going to get either flat lightning damage of a high tier 2 or higher, percent spell damage tier 2 or higher, attack speed tier 2 or higher, and then critical strike chance. I mean, if you're going to do this, probably tier 1. These are the cheapest ones, though the critical strike chance mod is the least favorable one for you because you don't get to take advantage of the strength, intelligence, and critical strike chance crafted modifier or veiled modifier, which is really great for us because we need both of those attributes. The attack speed crafted modifier / veiled modifier only gives 10% attack speed, and it gives dex instead of strength, which is not as good. Also, crit is pretty easy to cap on wand builds because of the high base crit, so, not a big priority here. So, if you start with flat lightning, or if you start with percent spell damage, you just use an essence to get the other one, because of these modifiers, these two, the spell damage and the flat lightning damage, especially the high tier, are the lowest weighted. They're very hard to get. So you're just going to try to get the other one. So here, you would just use Wrath Essences, Deafening, to get the high tier flat, along with the fractured spell damage. And here, you would use essences, Deafening Essences of Woe, to get high tier spell damage alongside your high tier flat. From this point on, the crafts are actually identical because you have the same two prefixes that you are deterministically putting on your item. So then I'm just going to proceed with the flat lightning one, but it's going to be the same either way. Alright, so you're going to spam essences until you hit attack speed. There we go. We hit tier 3. We're going to pretend that's a tier 1. Now, you can take crit if you have tons of attributes everywhere, but, attack speed is preferable. So you're going to get attack speed. And then we happen to not hit any other suffixes, which is great. So what you could do right here is actually just finish the item. You would just craft the modifier that gives critical strike chance, strength, and intelligence, and boom, you're done. If you wanted to do more with the item, then what you could do is, let's see, potentially veiled exalted orbit. So you could do something like prefixes can't be changed. Craft that on for 2 divines. Use a veiled exalted orb. And then you would hope to unveil the crit mod. There we go. And this would be, obviously slightly better. And then you could craft a 3rd suffix on. So where is the crafting bench? So you could probably do the double damage mod. I think there's also a critical strike multiplier mod. Like this one's pretty good. You could do this one as well. And that would be a great damage mod. And that's how you might finish it. Now, if you get to the point where you have attack speed, and if you also have, a bunch of suffixes, like let's say cold damage and let's say intelligence, then you're going to have to annulment orb of annulment, and remove those modifiers so that you can make room for the crafted suffix. Now, if you hit, like let's say, so you have attack speed and intelligence, and you have an open suffix, you actually can't craft the critical strike multiplier, critical strike chance and strength and intelligence mod, because the intelligence modifier blocks it. I think this is the only modifier that does that, so it should be pretty unlikely, but if you do hit it, unfortunately you're gonna have to annul it. So you would have to, hope to hit it. You could craft the can't roll attacks mod to preserve your attack speed mod, but I mean, it could still hit the spell damage mod, so probably not worth the divine. So just annul, and then start over again. It takes something like 130 essences to hit the tier 1 attack speed, I think, so, not really that much currency overall, especially if you're buying a base like this. And now, if you get to the point where you have your spell damage, you have your attack speed, and you have your fractured modifier, then what you could do, what a lot of builds would do is they would multi-mod. So they would take 3 modifiers, or is it 3 additional? up to 3. 3 crafted modifiers, and then you would do, obviously, the critical strikes suffix. Now here, what a normal build would do is take the penetration mod, which actually is good with the exalted, veiled exalted orb, because I think it's guaranteed, basically, either this one or the chaos one. But a normal build would take this penetration mod, which is pretty strong. However, we're using abhorrent interrogation, so penetration on our wand gives us literally nothing. So the best mod here, I think, would probably be the elemental damage with attack skills mod for like 30% increased damage. So is this really worth it? I don't know. So I think the best value is probably just to craft the single mod and just go about your day. Because, the wand, the biggest stats you can really get on it are the attack speed, the crit, the lightning damage, and the spell damage. Nothing else is really that crazy. And then that would, of course, be the same for the spell damage one. Now, if we're crafting on the suffix side, so if we have the attack speed or the crit chance, then what we're going to do is we're going to spam Wrath Essences either way. So let's get this, where's the Essence? Wrath. So if we have attack speed, we spam Essences until we get spell damage as a prefix. Tier 1 is extremely rare. It's going to take you a million, so I would settle for Tier 4. Alternatively, you could, if you get like a really high crit chance mod, you could take that as well and just craft spell damage, because you can craft like 64%, which is pretty high. I think equivalent to around Tier 4. But let's see if we can roll one here. We we got Tier 8, but spell damage goes up to 109. Tier 4 is like 69, and then the crafted one is 66, so we'll take what we can get. This one happens to also have a critical strike multiplier. So then here what you would do is, again, just craft the crit mod. Pretty simple. And then you would go by your day. Of course, this is going to be a higher tier of spell damage. And then, getting the third mod is nice, but again, with something like this, going further, doing the whole Veiled Exalted Orb nonsense or multi-modding stuff, like, probably not really worth it. Alright, so if we have a critical strike chance fracture to start with, and again, same exact thing. Here, ideally, we get the Tier 1 attack speed, so you're going to really be wanting to roll for attack speed unless you get a, like a Tier 1 spell damage mod or something. But that's, like, so unlikely. So we got Tier 2 here, and then we have an open prefix. So then what we would do is we would just craft the spell damage on to the prefix. Let's see. Spell damage, craft right here. And then you would do that. Now, if you had like if you filled your prefixes, so like if we had like, not the spell damage mod, but something random, like increased cold damage, right? Then what you can do is you can use the, if you have a suffix open, you can use cannot roll attack modifiers here, and then you can annul, do not scour. You can annul, and it'll actually protect your attack speed mod and your lightning damage mod. Obviously don't do this if you have the spell damage mod, but if you rolled attack speed, which is kind of what we're going for, so critical strike chance, attack speed high tier, and your Wrath Essence, then this basically guarantees that you're not going to annul them as long as this modifier is still there. You can annul the cannot roll attack modifiers mod. See? And then you've preserved all of them, and then now you can do your crafting as you please. So you could even multi-mod here, and if you did multi-mod here, what you would do is crafted modifiers. What you would do here is you would craft, just like before, the spell damage, and then you would craft the elemental damage over time mod. There's nothing else really amazing here. You could get the, where is it? The gain lightning as extra chaos damage, but the fact is that because we're penetrating lightning, lightning is just so much better than any other damage type. Gaining 5% as chaos really doesn't do much, whereas 30% increased damage is like, pretty good. Pretty good. It's not as good as the spell damage because the spell damage gets applied twice because of Kinetic Blast text that says increases and reductions to spell damage apply at 200%. So spell damage is king. Of course, roll your implicits with Blessed Orbs to get the 37% rule. And then to finish, you're going to enchant it with do we have that enchantment here? I don't think we do. But there's a harvest enchantment that says quality doesn't affect damage, that is physical damage, but increases attack speed. It costs like 5,000 juice, so that's like almost a divine. So, only do it if you think it's worth it, but it gives you a little bit more attack speed. It certainly gives you more damage, and it also helps a little bit with Fizz Reflect, because Fizz Reflect is really annoying. There's like a pretty significant amount of physical damage that can really hurt you, especially if you're scaling map effect. But yeah, that's the wand. Alright, to craft the helmet, we're going to want to start with a fractured base. So this is a Sunfire Circlet. That's a pretty high intelligence requirement. There is one that's higher. It's like 224 intelligence with slightly higher energy shield. That's a Lich's Circlet. I would not do that unless you like somehow have tons of intelligence from something. I might even go below this to the one that requires 170 intelligence, just because it was kind of annoying to get 194. But anyway, you're going to start with Fractured Life. You can get tier 1 for pretty cheap, I think. But tier 2 is fine, tier 3 is fine if you can't find anything for cheap. I don't know what the market's going to be like when you're crafting this. So start with a Fractured Base, and then you're going to, well, first of all, make it rare. And then you can either use Delve, so use Dense Fossils, or you can craft using Essences of Woe, which I think is just a little bit easier, because we're going to try to get our defense prefixes done first. So you just spam the energy shield, Woe Essence until you get a high tier energy shield modifier, percent energy shield. These are really common. It should only take you like 30. To get the tier 1, it should only take you like 50 or something. So don't settle for like tier 1 hybrid. Tier 2% is fine. Alright, so then once you're here, what you're going to do is you are going to go to Eldritch Crafting. You're going to craft with 1 Lesser Ember and then 1 Greater Ichor. We don't actually care about what the mods here are right now. And actually that's a good one. That's actually the one we need. Mana Reservation, well, one of them. But we are trying to get this item Eater of Worlds dominant so that we can activate the suffix side of the Eldritch currencies. So when the Eater of Worlds implicit is a higher tier, that means you use a more expensive orb, then all these orbs only affect the suffixes, which means if we use a Chaos Orb here, it doesn't affect any of our prefixes that we have nice and done. So you would basically just spam this until you get, good res. Like I got a tier 1 fire, tier 6 cold here, and then you can craft like a lightning res or whatever. And you would just swap the res using your Harvest Craft. And there's not really that much else to do here. Optionally, if you really needed chaos resistance here, then what you could do is, first of all, let's remove all the mods from the suffixes. What you can do is you can craft prefixes can't be changed, and you can harvest Reforge Chaos. Yes. And that tier 1. That guarantees a chaos modifier, and they all have equal weighting, so it's like a 1 out of 7 to get 35%, 1 out of 7 to get 30%. The only problem is the prefixes can't be changed mod costs 2 divines, and though the Eldritch or Chaos Orbs are pretty expensive too. So this is a way to get a guaranteed chaos resistance, and then you can, if you have space, I guess you could Exalt, and then you would just craft on another modifier. And then the implicit mods we want are for Eater of Worlds. You can either get Mana Reservation Efficiency, or you can go for Fizz Taken As if you have enough reservation efficiency. Okay, in the showcase and the POV, I'm using Fizz Taken As, but I think Mana Reservation Efficiency is actually better. And then for the Exarch mod, you want the Mana Cost Reduction mod for sure. Really, really good. If you can get that to a higher tier, then you can actually drop some mana cost reduction nodes, or even some mods on your rings, which could be pretty nice, a little flexible. Crafting the boots is going to be much like crafting the helmet. You're going to start with a fractured base. Fractured spell suppression is what I chose to do, but really, you can start whatever you want. You could do fractured chaos resistance if you really need it, fractured attributes if you really are in dire need of strength or intelligence. Like if you're using the, if you're not using the timeless jewel, then you wouldn't be getting a lot of strength from it. Really, any base works. High evasion is ideal, but you know, prices are prices. So look at what's in your budget. And then from here, what you're going to do is again essence craft. So first we make it a rare item, so we can actually use an essence on it, and then we are going to use essences of envy, probably because you're probably needing more chaos resistance to guarantee a tier 1 chaos resistance mod. The third mod is what you're going to look for, something good, you know, like a resistance modifier, so, or an attribute modifier, whatever you need. Probably resistance. Let's try for like a tier 2 or tier 1. Let's see. There we go. It's pretty easy to get, and of course you can shuffle your resistance modifiers around using harvest crafting, so you know, it's a pretty high chance to get a high resistance. And then for the prefixes, we're going to do the same exact thing, but we're going to use a greater ember and a lesser ichor, which means the prefixes are the mods that are going to be changed when we use the eldritch currency orbs. So here again, chaos oh shit. All right, you got I mean, this is kind of the ideal thing, but you use eldritch currency until you get a life modifier, and then you just craft movement speed. So movement speed and 100% chance to avoid being chilled. If you get ailment immunity from somewhere, then obviously don't do this. You can get the onslaught mod or just the straight up 24% movement speed mod. But yeah, that's it. And then if you do have an open prefix, I mean, go ahead and exalt. And then for the implicits, the Searing Exarch implicit, the Embers, you're going to want action speed. And then the Eater of Worlds implicit really can be whatever you want. I mean, technically the best thing would be tier, the highest tier of ailment avoidance, because then you could use an Ancestral Vision Jewel to cap your, or to become completely elemental ailment immune. But if you have ever tried spamming Orb of Conflict to try to get one mod to tier 6, even if you're doing the trick with the exceptional ichors, it's horrible. How you would do it is you would get a mod. I don't think it's that rare, but I mean, you might get it with, let's say, Greater or Grand Ichors, depends on where you want to start, to get a tier 2 avoidance, and then you would use a single exceptional ember. So I'm just going to show that. So if we had an exceptional ember here, that gets us a tier 3, which is the third highest, Searing Exarch implicit. And then let's just pretend that this bleed one is the one we want to raise. So then we would use a Orb of Conflict. Okay, well that, you know, that can happen too. But the higher tier has less of a chance of being raised. The lower tier has a higher chance of being raised. So then, you know, you would get that up, and then you would use another exceptional, and then you would use another Orb of Conflict. Now they're both tier 4. Use an exceptional again, Orb of Conflict, exceptional again, Orb of Conflict, Orb of Conflict, Orb of Conflict, Orb of Conflict. Okay, now it's tier 2, second highest tier. Another exceptional ember. Now you actually can't get this higher with just embers, so then the chances get lower here, and then you would get the tier 1. But that's honestly awful to do, so I would not recommend it. Just get whatever you want as an implicit. I don't think any of them are really that good. I think I did Fizz as extra lightning or something, which gets a tiny bit of extra lightning damage from our wand base Fizz. To craft the Abyss Jewels, you're going to want to get a Searching Eye Jewel with a Fracture, you know, just like the other ones. You know, this again depends on what is out on the market, what the prices are like. But I mean, ideally you start with a Fractured added lightning damage mod, either the regular added lightning damage with attacks or the added lightning damage with wand attacks. And then from there, you use Harvest, Reforge, Crit. Really high chance to get a Crit Strike multiplier mod, actually, as you can see. I mean, this one's fine as well, because this is really a mapping build, not a bossing build. And then you would want to get, you know, life and hopefully another flat damage mod. Yeah, so, you know, life is pretty common. This one is blind, so this is a good jewel. Crit, dexterity is okay, you know. These don't take too long to roll. But honestly, I would just probably recommend buying one on your own, just because these are kind of annoying to just roll and, like, you know, your eyes glaze over after you roll enough jewels. And you have to craft like 4 of these, I think like 5 of these or 6 of these if you're playing Gladiator. So I mean, I would probably just buy these. 6 mods drop from the corrupted, or what is it? The Beyond maps, where it's like the Abyss becomes the Beyond cracks or something in Kirak's mission. So I don't know if they drop from Abyss anymore naturally. Anyway, there are 6 modules that people find, and sometimes those are really strong. So, you know, before you craft these, do a search. You know, maybe it's in your budget. These can take, you know, a few divines to craft if you really want 4 good modifiers. So, again, buy, don't craft really, unless the market is really bad. Okay, crafting rings is interesting. So the rings that I'm using in that POB are really just resistance rings. So I would just buy that. It is not going to be cost effective to try to craft those. So if you're going to craft your rings, then you're going to want to be going for something slightly better. If you're going to do that, the one mod that you really want is going to be the Essence mod from the Essence of Scorn, and that gives you crit multi as a suffix. So if you're going to craft this, you're going to probably want a fractured ring, preferably like an amethyst ring, or really whatever you're missing in terms of resistances. And it doesn't have to be a fractured chaos mod. Obviously this is going to be expensive as a base. You can get, you know, any resistance mod or an attribute or whatever you're missing, you know, just suffix stuff. And then you would just, you know, spam this until a good third suffix. Like, I don't know, let's see, like intelligence, right? Or, you know, a resistance, like lightning resistance. Okay, and then what do you do? All right, so there's a beast called the Wild Bristle Matron. I don't think it's here. However, it is a beast that is cheaper to use than to craft the suffixes can't be changed modifier, because of all of the meta mods over here, the only meta mod that's a prefix is suffixes can't be changed. And the Wild Bristle Matron is a beast that when you use it with an item in your menagerie, puts a random crafted meta mod onto your item. So if you have full suffixes and open prefixes, this is guaranteed. So you Wild Bristle Matron this on, and then you can, you know, do whatever craft you want with harvest or something, and then, you know, you can get life. Alternatively, you could, you know, Veiled Exalts, and then, you know, you can get damage. This is a okay lightning roll, because lightning flat damage is pretty good. But that is how you would craft that with a higher budget, and then you would craft the mana cost reduction probably. Yeah. Alright, so crafting rings for the Mercenary is a little bit annoying. What you want before you use the Mist is you want tier 1 recoup, and you want tier 1 lightning resistance. As for the other 2 mods, or other modifiers on the item, sorry, you know, just get something that's, you know, meaningless if it gets reflected. So like -6 evasion rating is fine. Adding 2 damage to your attacks against you, who cares? So that when you flip the mods, it doesn't really negatively affect you. We're not trying to get super lucky here. We're just trying to control 2 modifiers here. All right, and if you have an open suffix, then you can craft the minimum endurance charge mod. If this goes negative, it does literally nothing. If it goes positive, it's pretty great. You would catalyst this if you want, though this does cost a good amount more with, where is it? The, it is the resistance modifier. Yeah, with prismatic, so that you can get higher resistance. So that you can get this even lower, because you really need a lot of negative lightning resistance. I think the Storming Zealot has 30% lightning resistance naturally without anything on him. So you need negative 230% lightning resistance, which is kind of hard to get, especially if it's not a Cobwebs ring or the 50% ring. So I think you need at least 1 Cobwebs ring, preferably with the resistance catalysts, though that is more expensive. The upside is, if you use the reflecting mist on it, and one of the rings has both negative recoup and negative lightning resistance, which means you failed, well, it's still going to have a ton of negative lightning resistance, which means you can sell the item, and you might even profit. So that's an option, and you can just restart. So there's like really no complete fail state, because you can always just sell the crazy negative lightning resistance ring, and somebody will buy them, because everyone's wanting to do the Doriani tech now. So how do we get here? How do we get to this point of damage taken with recoup and then lightning resistance? Okay, well, it's annoying as hell. There are no really easy ways. Fossil crafting sucks. If you use harvest crafting, it takes like 4 to 5 divines of rerolls worth of life, lightning, cold, or fire. Remember, if you get any of the resistances, you can reroll them with harvest. Essences don't work because, unfortunately, neither of the two mods are essenceable. So I think the best way to do it probably would be to recombinate, in which case what you would do is get 2 rings, and then just alt spam until you get recoup or a tier 1 resistance. So we're just gonna pretend like, let's get a prefix. Just a prefix. Come on, just a prefix. Whatever. Alright, we pretended that we got a recoup mod off of our alteration orbs. Okay, and then you would get another ring that has the lightning resistance mod on it. So like that. Now, if they both happen to have only one mod on them, then you would want to craft like a I don't know, like a min-tier mana mod or something on both of them, and then you would recombinate them. You would use the random one, not the one with the guaranteed percentage, and I think you'd have something like a 33% chance of getting it. So even that method is not very good in terms of currency. If anyone can come up with a better method, I would love to know, but unfortunately there's nothing like hyper efficient that I can really think of that you can do to get to that state. So what I did was I just bought rings. When I was looking, there were plenty of them available that had tier 1 recoup and a tier 1 or tier 2 resistance modifier. And then I just catalysted it, and then I misted it, and if I failed, I just sold it and then tried again. You don't have to do the cogwork ring for both rings, especially if the multiplier for the mist, which can go from 1.5 to 2.1, rolls really high on one of your rings. So I mean, theoretically, you could do this without cogwork rings if you get the multiplier high enough. In which case, you would just look for a ring, any kind of ring, that has a recoup and tier 1 recoup and tier 1 any resistance. You would try to find ones obviously that have modifiers that don't hurt if they go negative, and then you would just throw a bunch of mists at it and hope that you get the modifiers, get the high multiplier on the modifier. So nothing brilliant I can come up with this. There might be ways out there, I don't know, but I can't think of anything.